Hey everybody, welcome back to Dad Talk Today. I am your host, Eric Carroll, and we are live in Washington, D.C. at CPAC 2020. And today we have some very special guests, author and also U.S. congressional candidate, Kathy Barnett, and we got from Salem Media, Miss Stephanie Trussell. How are you ladies doing today?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yes, ma'am. So Kathy, tell us a little bit about your book and what you got going on.
Well, I am so excited. Let me just pick it up here so you guys can see a better look of it. It is called Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, Being Black and Conservative in America. It just was released earlier this month in February, and it hit Amazon's #1 for new releases. So I'm very excited about that. Someone asked me, how long did it take you to write this book? And I thought about it for a second. I said, a lifetime, right? A lifetime of just living and learning. And, one of the things I talked about is that I was born into the Democrat Party, just like I was born into brown skin. I never remember, anyone having a conversation or a discussion or any deliberation. You're black, you vote Democrat. And it wasn't until I decided to get involved when I was in college in a campaign. So I'm black, I'm Democrat, so I go to the first Democrat office I see. And as I'm sitting there, the gentleman starts talking, and for the first time in my life, the thought bubbled up, do you even know what he believes? Does what he believes aligns with what you believe?
Right.
And it was the most uncomfortable 35 minutes of sitting in that office. I could not wait to get out. But it was the seed that was planted that would cause me to start looking at the world through a different lens.
Right. Absolutely. And you are also running for Congress, am I correct?
I know, right?
Awesome.
I know. I'm a little black girl who grew up on a pig farm in southern Alabama. I grew up below the bottom rung of the economic ladder. I grew up in a home with no insulation, no running water, an outhouse in the back and a well on the side. When my grandmother would ask me to come help her with the garden, I thought she just wanted to spend quality time with me. I had no idea it was for our survival. But those are my genesis, and I'm so very grateful for those people who took the time to pour so much into my life. And I never felt like a victim. It's just the most amazing thing to grow up in such despair and to come out. I never remember anyone one time looking at me and saying, you're black, you're from the South, you have slavery in your DNA, so you're a victim. They never told me that. And so for me, I never knew I wasn't supposed to go to college and finish and be the first in my family to do that. I never knew, because I never felt like a victim, that I couldn't go into the military. I spent 10 years in the U.S. Army Reserves. When I left, I was accepted into officer candidacy school. No one ever told me I shouldn't be able to do that, right? But now you have people like AOC, for example, and the entirety of the Democrat Party who looks at me and says, you're a victim. You can't achieve. AOC just came out a few moments ago, earlier this week, I believe, saying, the whole boot and the bootstrap concept is a myth. That somehow I need a program, I need the government to bail me out. I've never been on welfare, I've never received any government assistance. I worked hard, I disciplined myself. I made some sacrifices in life. And from a pig farm to an author of a book that went #1 on Amazon to now running for Congress, only in America.
Awesome.
Only in America.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk to you some more about that and some other issues, but I want to talk to Miss Stephanie over here from Salem Media. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm awesome. Thank you again for having me.
Yes, ma'am. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I've been on the radio for over 7 years in Chicago, a conservative black woman in Obama's hometown, bashing our president when I first got on radio. People either loved what I was saying or were convinced that the Koch brothers were paying me to say what I said. But like Kathy, I grew up, my mother was 16 when she got pregnant with me. She was an orphan. My dad drove her to an abortion clinic to kill me, and my mother didn't get out of the car. And she didn't have a supportive family at home waiting to help her with this baby. She had no plan. She wasn't necessarily in touch with God and talking to him about what the plan was, but she had the strength not to get out of that car. And when we talk about unplanned pregnancies, and they make it sound like this little inconvenience, plan your family later. And I always wonder if my mother had been in a situation where some white liberal woman told her, well, plan your family later. Being born poor and black, you're orphan and you're going to bring a baby into this world, come on, let's just, get rid of it and then you'll be able to have a kid later. My mother went on to have my sister 2 years later by my dad. And I say that we were unplanned pregnancies, but my mother made sure we didn't lead unplanned lives. She sacrificed. She never graduated from high school until about 4 years ago, but she provided us with private school education. We went to Disney World. We had dance lessons on Michigan Avenue. And she just hustles. She says she's a Democrat, but she doesn't realize she's a Republican. She worked so hard and just showed us that, like you said, Kathy, nobody ever whispered in our ear, you have this oppression of slavery and you can't make it. She just did it. And I watched my mom do it. And in my mind, my mom dropped out of high school to have me, and I, unfortunately, unplanned pregnancy. I got pregnant, then married, and I dropped out of college. But my daughter has a master's degree from a private university because every generation just doing a little bit better than the last. And knowing that this is the greatest country on the planet, and how can I sit around crying and begging for stuff, and my ancestors were born into slavery, illiterate. They're freed, and then they taught themselves how to read and went off and got college degrees from Harvard without programs. And I'm going to sit around saying, where's my reparations? That's an insult to the legacy and the blood that was shed. And, Democrats, especially some black Democrats, tell us that we shouldn't embrace the flag. We shouldn't love this country. Our ancestors helped build this country. When I get to come to CPAC every year and I see the history, and I'm thinking, these are my people. They helped build the White House. I am standing on their memory. I cannot disgrace them by, living this life of dependency on every program. And I was a single mom because my first marriage, I married someone that wasn't a very nice person with 2 little kids. I decided to get out. I used a program that I paid $5 a week for childcare, and that helped me move out of the ghetto into a nicer neighborhood. But the moment that I got promoted, I was paying $74 a week instead. But that was great. I was okay to let that go. I temporarily used that program to get to where I needed. I didn't want to, some of these people where I come from in Chicago, their grandmother lived in this housing project, and now the grandkids live there. And that's unacceptable. That's not a legacy of dependency. You get to move in the same dependent house, which is not great places to live anyway, in failing schools. And the Democrat Party, it's quick to tell us, don't look at the Republican Party, they're racist. But what are they offering us? Every city run by Democrats, blacks are living in shooting gallery neighborhoods with failing schools, blighted, no grocery stores. But they're telling us the Republican Party doesn't care about you. Well, I'm tired of them caring about us so much that we can't, I don't know how much more of their care we can handle before. It's just really sad. And when you're from a place like Chicago that has been run by Democrats since the 1930s, when I grew up on the west side of Chicago, I didn't know I was poor. We had grocery stores. Every store on Michigan Avenue we had in our 4 blocks on the major strip. When I go over there now, the schools are closed, no grocery stores, nothing, no booming economy. Is really sad. Boarded up, but and I know it's a whole different issue, but the Hispanic neighborhood in the same zip code, booming, doing well, because illegals coming in demanding more schools, more dentists, more grocery stores. And as a descendant of enslaved Americans, resources taken from our community that is boarded up and rusty, it's been boarded up so long, it's rusty, and they're booming, and that's the difference. And our schools are closed and they're opening more schools. There's so many things in our community that the Democrats promise they're going to address, but they don't really want to address.
Right, and Kathy and Stephanie, there is an issue. We know that this happens in family court all the time, especially like the mudslinging that goes on, and we talk about parental alienation. But one thing I would like to talk to you ladies about, especially within inside the black community, that gets addressed a lot, but I don't think enough, is fatherlessness and the epidemic that is fatherlessness. Would you ladies like to touch on that for a minute?
Yeah, it's a real issue, right? And some of these policies that we see coming from the Democrat Party, Stephanie and I, we've had a front row seat at looking specifically in the Democrat Party, in the black community. But homelessness does not only impact the black community. Every community is being impacted by high fatherless rates, right? However, it's like those things that have impacted other communities. Once they come into the black community, they're just I don't know, it's like wildfire. They're exponentially more devastating to the black communities, and that's what we see in the black, and that's the trend that we see going on in the black community. We often hear people talk about, the number of children in the black community that are growing up in fatherless homes, 70%. Some people say as high as 74%. But I love this quote that I talk about in my book about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "Nothing is so much needed as a secure family life for people to pull themselves out of poverty. And when you begin to look at what happens in the black community, if you look at the white community, they have the number of married couples, the married households, is roughly 80%. In Asian homes is roughly 80%. In Hispanics homes is hovering around 75%. But this bedrock institution in the black community is only around 44%. So you have more than half of your community growing up in fatherless homes. And then you begin to look at some of the statistics just from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. 90% of homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 71% of pregnant teenagers lack a father, and 75% of adolescent patient in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. I mean, the role of the father in the household, it's so very important. I often tell my husband my role as a mother is very important. I will not demean or denigrate my role as a mother in the household. But if we're looking at what kind of citizens we're going to produce, that's the father plays so much into what kind of adults our children are going to grow up in. And when you take that away, you're taking away something that is a bedrock of every single family.
It's divine how it takes two people to make a baby. That's all by God's design. And then when the Democrat Party systematically removed the father from home, it's biblical that once you remove the protector, everybody else is vulnerable. And when you grow up with a single mom right away, economically, having two incomes or having one person to stay at home and the other person going out, making sure they have enough money to provide for the family. But when you think about a single mom and she's living in the ghetto, the first time that the kid sees a strong person is a gang member. He may not see uncles and the other male role models that are strong, and he sees this little kid, hey little man, I'm going to show you how to make your own money. And he's a leader in the community, he's respected, and I'm going to show you how you can get those Nikes, and you don't have to bother your mom. And the mom may turn a blind eye when she sees them coming in with these things. And that's unfortunate. Those are the role models. There's nobody, because even back when we were newly freed as slaves, when we were segregated, but you had a strong black family. The dad would come home with his blue collar shirt and put that lunchbox down from working, and they would sit down around that table and have a meal. Now it was 70% of black children were born into married homes, and now it's flipped. And so when you remove the role model, you remove, the bedrock of what a man is. So amazing, because what a man is, you can show a man how to be a man, but he also, the little girl sits on the lap, and that's the first male relationship she has, to trust somebody, and this is my dad, he's going to protect me. That's what you see, the chaos every weekend in Chicago. Every Monday we count how many shot, how many killed. All-Star Weekend basketball, chance to show off Chicago. 11 children are shot. And I'm listening to the news this weekend. They shot up a beauty salon, and the woman that I'm listening to, the host in Chicago, she said back in the days it was sacred. They never shot children and women. Chicago is the prime example of the failed policies of the Democrat Party. And if you listen to talk radio, don't even think about voting for Trump. Trump is all about school choices. We're going to break that cycle of poverty. These kids are forced to go to a failing school in their zip code. And all the policy that our president has talked about and now has delivered, Chicago is insulated. We don't want anything to do with Trump. But look at the results of the Democratic policies year after year, keeping us on that plantation, voting for this party of just dependency from cradle to grave.
Absolutely. And I believe that both parents play a vital role into the children's life. Mm-hmm. Can it be done with a single parent?
Oh, yeah.
I was a dad. I raised two girls by myself. Yeah. It can be done, but what benefits would we have if they didn't have to?
Right.
Yeah, even a lot of people, sacred cow, President Barack Obama said that a child who grows up without a father is 20% more likely to have a run-in with the law. I talk about also 34% of single mothers raising a family live at or below the poverty line. Only 6% of married couple households live below the poverty line. So think about that. You have if you're a single mother, you're 34% below the poverty line. But if you're a married couple, it's only 6% of married couples living below the poverty line. So we can just stop there and look from an economic perspective. How much harder it is. I grew up in a single mother household. It was very challenging. I remember the threat of being homeless, right? I remember not having adequate food in the refrigerator, right? Or not having my mother in the home to protect us, and myself and my two little brothers vying for our own, security and safety. I mean, it's not the ideal situation, but because of the Democrat Party, you know, I mean, what, 56 years now that we've been on what we call the Democrat plantation, from Lyndon B. Johnson, you know, coming up with his Great Society role that essentially took the father out of the household, because in order to get welfare, you cannot have a man in the household. So now, like, that creates this false image of the strong black woman, right? Because she's strong because there's no man in the household, but now you don't
Big
have a man.
is
Because
yeah,
now you're married to the government.
Right, yeah.
Because
Strong,
he's
but
paying
also the
rent.
victim at the same time.
Strong,
Right,
but the
yeah.
strong, but the victim, right, of Democrat policy that tell you if you want this check, you
gotta get
can't
rid of
have
the
a man
man,
in the
right.
house. So now that creates this scenario where you have multiple men coming into this household, right? Now you have multiple babies with multiple baby daddies,
get more
right?
money every time
Because
you
you
have a
get,
baby.
and you have the added disgrace with each child. You get a little bit of a pay raise in some
Right.
people's mind, right? You get a little bit more money, but you can't have a man in the home. So now you're forced to be married to the government, who comes in, pays your rent, pays your light bill, buys your food with food stamp, gives you a phone, pays for your internet, right? So now what do you need a man for, right? Because now I'm married to the government, and if you don't act right, man, I just kick you out and I go back to my first love, the federal government, right? But it just creates an unstable situation, and we have seen, and yourself included, I'm sure, have had a front row seat at looking at the devastation of the Democrat policies. It has left our communities broken and bruised. And one of the sad things that I see now is that liberals have perfected the art of destabilizing our communities, and now they've repackaged those same failed policies, and now they're presenting them to the broader American culture, right? Free health care, free education, guaranteed job. How did that differ from welfare food stamps, right? And it left us broken and bruised, and now it's promises. I mean, I had to fight to get out of that bad situation. Now I'm enjoying the plethora, the fruitfulness of the American culture, and here come these Democrats threatening to destroy it all over again.
And what happened to that American dream fire in your belly? I grew up on the west side of Chicago where people would get on the bus selling socks, hustle, just working their job, trying to just do anything to achieve the American dream. And now it's like
You don't need that government.
getting a big check, but now the latest thing, public aid isn't good enough. Having one of your children declared disabled, you get that Social Security disability check, cha-ching. And it's like, what's going on? They've hobbled our generation where in their mind, instead of saying, I'm going to go out and get it, what America was built on, it's like, oh, I'll sit back and wait for somebody to deliver a program to help me. And I'm just thinking about our legacy of freed slaves. When they were freed, they didn't want reparations. They just wanted the government to get out of their way so they could go out. The government had already enslaved them, literally, physically, in every way. So now that they were free, they just wanted to go out and live the American dream. They weren't sitting around saying, well, I'm not going to do anything until I get my reparations. And I'm for reparations, but for former slaves. And if you see one walking around giving what they're owed, I don't want anything, because I lived the American dream
So it's
every day.
another government program.
That's just going to hobble you in some way. And then when I first made the decision to move out of Cook County and move to what they consider a white suburb, everybody told me, you'll never fit in, stay in the city in the failing schools that my kids were going to. And I moved to the suburb where it's 3% black, but the schools were so phenomenal, and all 5 of my children were just given an amazing opportunity. And I just remember, I grew up in the ghetto where I walked through vacant lots filled with broken glass. I get to live in one of the best communities, best counties in Illinois, where I see green grass every day, and I appreciate when I'm driving down the street, I keep thinking, this is what my kids see every day. This is their life. When I was growing up, it wasn't as bad as it is now, but I just think I never got to see what my kids get to see. They live in a place where they feel very safe, and I was told never to raise black men in this county that I live in, and I raised 4 just to show this person off. And my kids, I would love for people to talk to them and say, what was it like to be a 6'3" black man raised in this lily white community? And they will tell you. And my son, my oldest, I joke, he's got such a great personality. He could be mayor of our town if he wanted to. Everybody loves him. Even though he's 35, I walk through any grade school. How's Julian doing? How's Sierra doing? People that love. And now that my granddaughter's going to the same school that my kids went to, and she walks into the open house, and the teacher pulls out a book and says, this is your dad when he was 9. And my granddaughter was so impressed that it was so fast, because my kids just left that kind of mark. Everybody, they love small community. And I kept thinking, had I listened to my relatives that told me I'd never fit in DuPage County, my kids, every once in a in a while I go to my zip code and put in the high school that my kids would be going to. Graduation rate 50%. I'm thinking, yeah, my kids would have been better off in Chicago with people that look like them. No, they're better off where they are, living the American dream, showing that my community doesn't care what color you are. We're sending our kids to school, we're cheering for each other at football games, and I joke my husband happens to be white. He's the only one that doesn't fit in because he gets up on Sunday trying to cut the grass too early. Most neighbors don't like him. They love us. And so I try to encourage people in Chicago, you know, make some sacrifice, move out of that school, the district. They care only about the teacher's salary. ACT scores in Chicago are 17%. Our average in my school is 26. I'm like, move to a community, make a sacrifice. Don't do cable, drive an old car, but move to a community where you have quality schools and you don't have to know somebody to get into the good schools. And it's all about education if you're going to break that cycle of poverty.
Absolutely. And you know, we made a video not too long ago that talked about the fatherless statistics and some of the things that go on. Some of them you might not, you know, think would happen, but it's something that they've got to start looking at. Higher rates of suicide, divorce, school dropouts, molestation. I mean, so many economic disparity. The whole 9 yards is tied in to those statistics. And I believe if we start tackling some of those issues, it'll trickle on down to some of these other issues that we've been trying to face. But Kathy, I've got a question for you from Mr. Jeff Morgan. He said Clarence Thomas talked about the role of grandparents in his life. You talked about your grandmother. Can you talk a little bit more about the role of grandparents in the development and formation of children for their stability of the family?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my grandmother, when I think about my maternal grandmother, Patty Randall, I just love her. I'm so very grateful for my grandmother. She's gonna make me cry.
They're special.
They are, right? And then on my father's side, you know, I mean, like, they're special. Many people can go and Google my story, but I am the byproduct of a rape. And my mother was 11 years old and my father was 21 when I was conceived, and it was my grandmother that was a net for my mother and I, providing a safe place for us, loving me. I grew up very loved. I had no idea that all of these circumstances, whether it was poverty or the fact that, you know, I'm the byproduct of a rape, but they loved me and they poured so much into me. And I'm so very grateful for my grandparents. I'm so very grateful to God for them. They are eternally valuable, right? And now I have the wonderful opportunity of having my mother move in with me and my family, and now she gets to tell her stories to my children. I'm very grateful for that.
Awesome. Ladies, this is such a powerful story. I would like to have you back one day, and I ask everybody, please go and check out this book. What is the name of it again, and where can everybody keep up with the two of you?
It is my life story, a little bit of everything. It is nothing to lose, everything to gain, being black and conservative in America. I represent everything that is good about this country, and I wanted to tell that story and get another face, another voice out there in our culture today that says if you're black, you're a victim. If you're poor, you're a victim, right? And so I'm very grateful to God for the opportunity to write it.
Absolutely. Miss Stephanie, where can everybody find you?
Well, I'm a talk show host out of Chicago, and I work for 560 AM as a fill-in host, but I'm on social media, The Stephanie Trussell Show. I post way too much, but this has just been such a great experience. I want everybody, if you have a chance to come to CPAC, I don't care if you don't have to be in media, you have access to some amazing people, everybody you love, and just not only the speakers, but the people. And I met Kathy at the elevator 5 years ago, and we became friends at CPAC. And so that's why you come, just to be around other patriots and love this country.
Yes. Thank you so
ladies,
much.
thank you so much. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back.